Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, look at that. Thank you. Oh, my. Thanks a lot. Thank you. Please be seated. Thank you so much for a very warm welcome here at Whistler on the traditional territory of the Squamish and Lillooet First Nations. It is a privilege to be back. I want to thank the UBCM executive for doing a fantastic job of bringing us all back together in person so that we can look face to face. President Rudenberg, thank you for the invitation, and it's so good to be here in Whistler. This is, of course, my 8th time addressing this convention, 3 interminable years in opposition, and 5 glorious years as Premier. And this regrettably will be my last one, but it is great to be where I started in front of this body here in Whistler, which, of course, was the first resort municipality in Canada, created by that crazy, wacky freestyle skier, Dave Barrett. You might remember him. My favorite crazy Canuck was Dave Barrett. And it's all thanks to him that we're assembled here today. And I know there will others that will take credit, but history will record that the first resort municipality in Whistler was created by the Barrett government. So it's good to be here. And one of the things that we always do when we come together is we reminisce and we tell stories. And I hope you'll indulge in me later on in my remarks as I tell a few stories about the roads that I've been on with all of you, many of you at least, over the past 17 years as an MLA and 8 years as Leader of the Opposition and Premier. But what we do when we come together is we share best practices, we share our stories of anguish, our stories of hope, our stories of delight. And although we were able to continue through the pandemic with virtual meetings and gatherings and sharing our stories and working on our challenges, nothing quite beats the 15-minute speed dates that we've been having over the past week. And I have said to the many groups that I've met with this week that as a former staff member, I used to have to assemble the big honking binders for ministers. And I thought at that time, as a young, impressionable individual, that if these binders were of any value, I couldn't see it. All of the work that was done never came back in any meaningful way to me. But now that I'm the recipient of the big honking binders, I'm so grateful to the staff at Municipal Affairs who have been our hosts as well as UBCM, keeping us all moving, making sure that the meetings are running on time, and that we're able to do so much in a short period of time. Just yesterday, the Regional District of Alberni-Clackwoods had a modest request, and before the day was done, that request was answered. And I don't want to set the bar too high, but that is an example of how when we get to talk about the challenges, when we get to be with the people who can assist in moving decisions along at the local government, at the provincial level, and at the federal level, we can make progress. And as we reflect on the past year, or indeed the past 5 years, we have to think about droughts, we think about floods, we think about landslides, wildfires, heat domes, atmospheric rivers, poison drug supply, and of course, a global pandemic. These are not ordinary times, and I know there are many millennials in the room, but I also know there are some senior citizens, so you'll understand me when I say and use a cultural reference that this has kind of felt like a 1970s disaster movie. Towering Inferno meets the Andromeda Strain or something like that. And again, I see the old people laughing. I lift my hands to you. To the young people, thank goodness Google can get you up to speed and whatever that's. I think Ernest Borgnine would have been my character, and I don't think that's a compliment, just so everybody knows. But it has been a challenging time, and I've said this in the media. Certainly the Dean of the Press Gallery will remember it. He was probably there when it was made. The statement was made back in the 50s and 60s. But Harold Macmillan, the famous British Prime Minister, was asked how people should reflect on his time in government, and his response was, "Events, dear boys." And of course, at that time, the media were mostly boys, so forgive me for my non-inclusive reference, but events is what has shaped the term that you're just completing. And I hope that it hasn't contributed to the decision to retire for many of you, but I know that lots of the people in this room are going to retire because they've had enough and they want to move on to other pursuits. And many of you, of course, will be retired not by your own making, and I apologize for that, but you can take that up with the people in your community. But it is the time and the season, and what an appropriate time for us all to come together here in Whistler to talk about the challenges in communities in every corner of the province. And when we come together, and this is my last opportunity to reflect on these points, and I wanted to be absolutely clear that the only way that we got through the past 5 years, the only way we were able to give confidence to the people in the communities that we represent was by collaboration, by working together, by acknowledging that we have 3 orders of government in Canada, a federal order, a provincial order, and a local government order, and all of us, at the end of the day, come from a local government. I am first and foremost a resident of Langford. I am secondarily a resident of British Columbia, and I am lastly a proud citizen of Canada. But it starts every day when we get up in our hometown, in our own neighborhood, and all of us decided to pursue public life with one goal in mind, to make life better for our neighbors, wherever we lived. Whatever order we aspired to reach to, we did it with one thing in mind, not self-aggrandizement, not pats on the back, but doing what we could to make life better for the people that we saw each and every day. Local citizens, not provincial citizens, not national citizens, but local citizens. So again, I lift my hand to all of you who have had careers, and in dog years, the past term is really 28 years, not 4. So hands up to all of you for that. I need water, man. Right here. Oh, right here. Great. One of the consequences of the radiation treatment is that my mouth is the Sahara Desert, and my spouse thought that that meant I would speak less. It just means I stop more frequently to drink water, but I continue to speak too much. So when we put our hands up and said, "Dear neighbors, I'd like you to support me so that I can support you," we all did it with an objective to make sure that we were providing the best possible care for those in crisis. We all came forward to try and make sure we had appropriate housing for people in our communities. We all want to make sure the premier social program in our nation, publicly funded, universally accessible health care, is there not just for today, but for future generations. We all know we're struggling in these areas. We see in our streets citizens that desperately need more help than we've been giving them to this point in time. We all know that these problems didn't arrive yesterday. And we all know we won't be able to resolve those problems just by getting to tomorrow. But we have to commit to each other today that we're going to do our level best to improve the lot of the people who elected us. Making sure they have housing, making sure they have mental health and addiction services, making sure we're addressing lawlessness that seems to be rampant in every part of our province, in every part of our country, and indeed in every part of the world. I often get criticized for saying we live in a sea of 7 coming on to 8 billion people. But we need to reflect upon that. We 5 million British Columbians are among the most fortunate people on the planet. And most of us don't take that for granted. But all of us must recognize that we do live in a world of billions and billions of people that are struggling with the very same things we are. But we have a competitive advantage. We have a system of government that may not be the best in the world, but it's the best that we've been able to devise to this point in time. Elections that decide where we go, how we're going to get there, and we work collaboratively between those elections. I am a partisan. I'm apologizing for that, I suppose. I have my values. I grew up with these values. They were instilled in me by my mom and my family, and I'm unapologetic about that. But when those values were instilled in me, I was also taught to respect the views of other people and to learn from the views of other people. To say every day that I don't have the answers to the world's problems, but I can find them if I find allies and accomplices in the mischief that we can create together. And that mischief, if I can say good trouble, to quote a legendary American legislator, that good trouble is what should inspire us all. Those of us who are exiting stage left for me, stage right for others, as we depart, we need to make sure that we leave behind the sense and spirit of collaboration that all of us in our heart know is the only way that will solve the problems of today. The only way that our communities will look at us with the respect that we deserve. And I want you to all reflect on all of the hard work you've been doing, and you do it not because of the aggrandizement and the rallies of support at the end of every day. You do it because you're driven to public service. And it is a noble calling, and despite the deterioration of civility in our communities, the advent of comment sections on newspapers and the Twitter dome and the Insta stuff, I have millennials that report periodically to me about what goes on there, and I understand that it is oftentimes venomous, but it's also oftentimes joyous. And I prefer to select those times when people have a smile on their face us as we've come through the global pandemic. And when people say, what do you think, John, about this denigration of civility, this animosity and anger and frustration? I acknowledge it, I recognize it, and then I think of all of the people I've had the good fortune of stumbling upon over the past 63 years, quite frankly, of my life. We are an amalgam of all of the people we meet. We are shaped by those who influence us for good and for bad. And for my money, we are overwhelmed by kindness and generosity in British Columbia and in Canada. We are overwhelmed by good wishes every single day. And there will be those who are never happy. And we should weep for them, because they're missing out on all the fun we're having, all the excitement we get from engaging with our neighbors, from hearing their stories, and then telling those stories to other people, and expanding our network of collaboration. Those who've had the misfortune of going through the public healthcare system as I did are reminded that every day frontline healthcare workers get up and they collaborate. It's a workplace, let's be candid. You don't like everybody you work with. I'm looking at many of my caucus members. I don't want you to think that I don't love you all. But in a workplace, we don't always get along. But I witnessed firsthand men and women from the admissions desk at Jubilee Hospital, to the radiologists in the cancer clinic, to the post-op nurses, to everyone in between, a level of collaboration that I would love to see in our politics. I know that happens at council tables. I see the loudest responses from the MLAs in the room, but because I know at council tables that collaboration is just a way of life for you. You know that you can disagree with your colleagues. You know that you may have a difference of opinion on a particular application or a direction on land use in your community, but you also know that the only way you're going to be able to get through it is by collaboration. And that's what the vast majority of people do each and every day in their lives. They may come home and complain to their spouse about the idiots they have to work with, but when they're working, they're trying to deliver the services that people need and people deserve. And I am very proud to live in a province where we can have disagreements. We can be passionate about our point of view, but also reflective about the good fortune we have and the importance of all of us working together. I had a whole bunch of other things I was going to say, as you can well imagine. I think there hasn't been a time I have stood here with not a big pile of paper and I just keep moving the pages, hoping that I'll find where I left off, and I never do. But today I had a plan, and I know that will surprise my colleagues, but a sense of enthusiasm at that. I was going to talk about the programs that we've announced recently. I was going to talk about how we're doing our best to address the challenges of our time, but you know that. We issue press releases all the time. We have access to the media. I'm going to have the good fortune of answering some thoughtful questions with as best answers as I can shortly after this speech. But for me, UBCM has been a place where governments, and I've been a staff member in governments, I've been an opposition member observing governments, and I have been the government. And UBCM has often been characterized as the place where lolly is handed out. We wait till we get to UBCM to announce programs. What we've tried to do is turn that on its head. Instead of coming to UBCM and saying something for you, something for you, something for you, we've come to say, what can we do over the next year together? And so we don't think about how we could save announcements for municipal and local governments for this week. We say, how can we come into this week and learn what we need to do over the next year? And that's been our approach, and I'm hopeful that governments that follow this one will do the same thing, so that you as local representatives know that you can be accessing services, accessing opportunities to kickstart infrastructure programs in your community, to make sure that there's collaboration on the issues that you need, not just during UBCM week, not just during the speed date, but during the whole year. And I believe that's how government should run. Government is not here to shine light on itself. Government is here to provide services for people. And when we lose sight of that, it becomes theater or performance art. And that's not what we're supposed to do. That may be what people expect of us who observe us, and the cameras are here for that purpose. I understand that. But at home, as I said to my friends at the Association of Vancouver Island Coastal and Coastal Community, AVICC, I usually don't defer to acronyms, but in that case, it's the easiest way to go. I said to them, so I say to all of you, you wouldn't worry what people thought of you if you knew how seldomly they did. And it's not designed as a laugh line. It's designed as a reality. Our communities, the people that live in our communities, our neighbors, are focused on their issues. And our job is not to focus on ourselves, but to focus on meeting their needs. And when we do that, and when they don't think about us, I consider that mission accomplished. Government should be there to practice what we preach. Services for people. When we see deficiencies, we fill those deficiencies. When we see needs, we fill those needs. Resource Benefit Alliance. I see a couple of my brothers sitting in the front. There should be more sisters with you, I'm just saying. I know in my caucus, there are more women than men, and therefore, the first time in BC history, certainly, and I've scoured the record books and can't find another government, except perhaps in PEI, where they have more senators than they have. Well, anyway, don't get me down. I wasn't going to criticize the federal government just for another hour. But honestly, we all have stories, and the RBA was something that started here, and we were able to conclude with Minister Cullen and the leadership of the RBA a further MOU to advance that initiative so that we can see the benefits that we have already experienced with the Columbia Basin Trust in the southeast, with the Fair Share program in the northeast. We want to make sure that the northwest has the same opportunity to benefit from the resources that are in their territories, on unceded territory, stay as best as we can in those communities. That's the objective of the RBA, and that's what we'll continue to do. I also know that as we come together, there are frustrations and there's disappointments, and we need to acknowledge those frustrations and acknowledge that disappointment, but not be deterred by it. I continue to be relentlessly optimistic. As I come to the end of my time in this office, I look back on all of the extraordinary things I've seen, the grace I've seen on the faces of those who've had everything wiped out. I was in Lytton, of course, following the tragic events there, and we spoke with Mayor and Council yesterday, just unprecedented. I've said unprecedented, I think, more than any other word over the past 5 years, but truly unprecedented. But what I will remember for the rest of my life was going to Lillooet, to the fire camp, and talking to BC Wildfire Service members, two of which were working as hard as they could with what was not the worst fire season, only the third worst fire season in 3 years, back in 2021. And two of the members were from Lytton. Their homes were gone. They had nothing to go back to, and they continued to be there to protect other communities. And then I saw them later on in the summer in Vernon. Same two guys. They didn't have a home to go back to, but it didn't matter. They were going to be there doing what they could to protect other people. And that grace and that determination, I think, should be in the back of all of our hearts and all of our minds as we go forward. As challenging as some of our days can be, imagine what the people of Lytton have gone through. Imagine those firefighters who are still out there today in late September fighting fires in British Columbia. I lift my hands to them and all of the emergency response personnel. I've visited EPOCs. I got the wrong acronym. You all know what it is. Emergency social services come together from around the province. They come to communities they may have never been to, and they work as best they can to make sure people have hope. And hope is what gets us going each and every day. Hope is defining for the human condition. And I hope that I hope that you will all take that away from my comments today. The grace, the resolution, no. The grace and the resolve of the people who are there every day providing the services that are so important to us. UBCM is a place where I've met many of you. I want to tell about Sarah Story, who I met, the mayor of Fraser Lake. She's over there. Met her when I was leader of the opposition. And for those who are in opposition now, take advantage of this opportunity to talk to people and to hear their stories, to bring them back to the legislature to help make government better. I did that all the time when I was in opposition. Never a discouraging word. I remember always being positive. Always, every time. But in this instance, Sarah invited me to Fraser Lake, and I'd never been. So I said, yeah, let's go. So she picked me up in her red pickup, and we went to White Swan Park, and I was just in awe of the beauty of her community. We went to the Legion for some indoor lawn bowling, and thank goodness we weren't playing for money. But I thought I was set up there, quite frankly, Sarah, but it was a great experience, and I'll never forget it. I remember going to Fort St. James at the invitation of the then mayor to talk about healthcare in that community. And I went to the old hospital, a few Atco trailers, literally stuck together with duct tape, uneven. They didn't even have an opportunity to level them, or perhaps in the 70s when they were seated for a temporary purpose, they were level, but certainly come 2018, they were not level anymore. And so I met the people of Nakasley and Glaston and Binchie, and I went to Takla Landing, 3 hours north of Fort St. James. And I danced and sang and celebrated with the people of Takla Landing. And I will always remember the kindness that I received as this guy that just flew into town, the only premier ever to do that. And that didn't matter. I don't think they cared less that I was the premier. It was an opportunity to celebrate the bounty of the community and the goodwill and good wishes that they had for those who had come to their territory uninvited, often bringing pestilence, often bringing other challenges. But it didn't matter because on that day, they were celebrating all of their bounty. And I was blessed to be there. I also remember being a coastal dweller and passionate about salmon. I talked about the beauty of coho at the mouth of the San Juan River, fat and silver, and I was told about the sockeye in Nakasley that I thought looked a little bit rugged, and my host, Ann Sam, said, they're not rugged, they're beautiful. They've come a long, long way to be with our people, and they have been doing that forever. And those are the types of things that I will take away. The slide at Big Bar and the impact that that had on the salmon runs that affect not just the people of the Fraser and the tributaries and the rivers that come off that, but the animals as well and the forests. The salmon are iconic, but they're also fundamental to our ecosystems. And how did we address the challenges at Big Bar? By talking to Indigenous peoples, by bringing orders of government together, collaboration to solve a problem that wasn't of our making, but had been dropped down upon us. Events, dear people, events. That's what governing is about. You can have a platform, you can have a plan, you can stick to it rigidly, but things happen along the way. I was going to use a swear word, but you know what things can be on the way. And I learned that in Nakasley. I learned that in Fort St. James. I learned that I can't talk about Cisco the duck at UBCM conventions because I did that once before and I got the same blank looks I'm getting right now. Does anybody? No, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I want to talk about stopping in Vanderhoof with Mayor Thiessen, who's not running again. I want to thank Jerry for his service. I went to talk. I went to talk to Jerry about the sturgeon that they have, the sturgeon that they're putting into the Nechako and all of the excitement around that. I went to their council chambers, apparently the first premier ever to do that. I think Jerry just told me that. I don't know if that's true. I haven't checked it out. But it was good to be there and hear directly from council, not during UBCM week, but just because it was an important opportunity to discuss things. And Jerry said, have you got 5 minutes? And regrettably, I always seem to have 5 minutes. It always seems to take longer than that, but I had 5 minutes. And Jerry and I went up to the medical center, and it was a Sunday afternoon, and he got on the phone and he called one of the local docs, and he came down and we talked about the importance of primary care in rural and remote communities. And we have been making progress. We met yesterday to talk about that progress, and we'll have more to say down the road. But in order to understand the problems, you have to have a conversation about it. And it shouldn't be an acrimonious conversation. It should be a fact-based, rational, and reasonable conversation. Jerry and I had that. Jerry and I were able to push things along, and now Vanderhoof will be, in the short term or the near term, will have their needs met with respect to a healthcare facility. So that's good news. And I think it was about an hour and a half rather than 5 minutes, so that's kind of like pandemic time, I guess. Sometimes this job is like playing, not really like working. It's hard for me to come home and when Ellie asked me how my day was, and I say, I was in Delta with Mayor Harvey. We opened up a cricket pitch, and I took a few swings and had a lot of fun. She said, that's not work, that's play. And I said, well, it was work because it was the first cricket pitch in Delta. So Mayor Harvey, good work, and thanks for letting me swing the bat. I got to participate in tribal journeys with the Sauk Nation a couple of years ago, pre-pandemic. I had a piece of cedar that was given to me by the Pachidat people in Port Renfrew. And I went to Sauk, and I did a little bit of sanding, but the master carver of Sauk, who's a Songhees member, carved a canoe, or paddle for me rather, and I shined it up a little bit, and we went paddling from Sauk to Beecher Bay, and it was actually a transformative time for me, all pulling in the boat, Chief Planis behind me, setting the tone with his drum, and me hitting the paddle of the woman in front of me almost every single stroke. And so it became, I had a canoe with seven paddlers and a premier, and they would have been much better off with an eighth paddler. But it was a transformative moment for me, having an understanding of the highway that is, of course, the waterways of British Columbia, which were the pathways for the people who came long before the rest of us arrived. I also have been transformed by working with the Chinese Canadian community on the establishment of the first in Canada museum for Chinese Canadian peoples. And the artifacts and the stories and the contribution of Chinese people to Canada is profound. And it's not just about railways, it's not just about restaurants, it's about how people came from a long way away and put down roots and built a nation without having the rights that others did. And despite that oppression and despite that racism, Chinese Canadians have got a proud spot in the history of this country, and I am delighted that George Chow and I and Melanie Mark were able to establish the first ever Chinese Canadian museum. I know it's a little bit early to talk about museums, but I think it's a safe place for me, so I wanted to do that. The last story I have two more stories, and how's my time? I know everyone wants to get out of town, but how's my time? We good? We're good? Okay. I recently went to Haida Gwaii, to Dajengist, at the invite of Mayor Olson and his council. And we changed together, the community and the provincial government, we changed the name Queen Charlotte City to Dajengist. Now, whenever you're on the main island and you're going down to Skidegate, be sure to stop in Dajengist, where you'll have hospitality from Mayor Olson and others. But what was really profound about being there was that this was reconciliation from the ground up. A non-Indigenous council reaching out to the Indigenous peoples of Haida Gwaii and saying, how should we go forward? Extensive collaboration starting from the council, reaching out to people and doing something historic. And one would think that the changing of a name is not that big a deal. We've made it a lot easier to change your driver's license, for example. I realize that that's a bad joke, but Nathan gave it to me. Okay. But what moved me about being with Chris and his council and the people of Dajengist and the people of Haida Gwaii was it was a celebration. It was a recognition and a reminder that although Chris and his council were not Haida by birth, they were Haida by presence. The land that they live on, that they're proud to be part of, is the Haida Nation, acknowledged and named as it would be in the Haida Nation. And that was not a direction from the leadership of the council, the Haida the president of the Haida Nation. It was directed by Chris and his council. That's reconciliation. That's an acknowledgement of where you are and how important it is to be part of the greater thing, which is this experiment called Canada and British Columbia. So I lift my hands to Chris and his council for their leadership. I also had the opportunity to visit Lower Post. Hands up if you've ever heard of Lower Post. I'm happy to see that many hands up. Lower Post was the center for a residential school for Northern British Columbia, Northern Alberta, and the Territories. There was the remnants of the residential school there that had been directed by the federal government to be the administration building for the Kaska people. The Kaska, the Taku River Tlingit, and the Tahltan invited me to come to see their administration building, and I went there, and it was a ramshackle piece of building that was supposed to be where council meetings happened, where the mail came, where members of the band would come to get the services that they need. But it was also the place where unbelievable atrocities took place for many of the elders that were still living in the community. And I went into the basement with one of the elders. I had two with me for the day. The second couldn't go down the stairs because of the horrors that he had experienced in that building. And when I heard that the federal government, and this is not a slight, this is administration being done 3,000 miles away from the people who need the service. I don't mean any disrespect to those who were making these decisions, but someone made a decision to allow that building to stand when the people in that community said it needs to come down. I worked with the federal government, particularly with Minister Chrystia Freeland, and that building came down, and the second visit to Lower Post was much more gracious, much more glorious, much more celebratory than the first visit. And that, in my mind, is the power of change. We were able, for a modest amount of money, you could find it in the couch cushions of the Minister of Finance in Ottawa. For a little bit of money, we could change the lives of people who have been before us and those who come after us. So when we think about budgets, when we think about dollars to programs, think about the transformation that that money can have on people's lives. And I appreciate that people will say, well, we've got to mind the dollars or the pennies, and the dollars will take care of themselves. I can say that because that's what my mom always told me. And I believe that to be true. But I also believe there are extraordinary times when we have to take action together. The pandemic was a time when you told us your concerns, we transmitted them to the next order of government, and together we solved the problems. Massive amounts of money, desperately needed, and now we have a balanced budget, we have a surplus going forward, and we're still delivering services, we're still building housing, we're still doing everything we can to meet your needs, and that is the power of collaboration. This is the part where I come back to where I started, which is kind of neat because I rarely do that. But I started with Dave Barrett and the creation of this beautiful town. And now I'm going to end with Dave Barrett. Two things. First of all, one of the things Dave Barrett did was got rid of the strap. And I was a beneficiary of that, and I didn't even know it at the time. I was in middle school, and Dave saved my hands, and I thank him for that. But he also bought a place called Ocean Falls. Ocean Falls, if you don't know it, is a little tiny dot on the Central Coast, just inland from Bella Bella, the territory of the Helsik people. And I had the good fortune of spending a year there making pulp and money so that I could go to university. And it was at UBCM, in one of my meetings, I met with the regional district of the Central Coast, and they said, we have a serious problem in Ocean Falls. And I said, I've been to Ocean Falls, and a smile came on her face. I said, yeah, we know. And so some thought had gone into the presentation, and they had asked if I could work with them to address derelict buildings that, of course, had been abandoned when the town was closed by another government, not Dave Barrett's, and I'm putting my partisanship aside, as I told you, so I won't name them, but you know who they were. And so Ocean Falls was closed down, and when I arrived in Ocean Falls, it was raining back in 1978. And when I left Ocean Falls, it was raining. And I returned just this past summer, and guess what? It was raining. And that's because they get 14 feet of rain a year in Ocean Falls. Yeah, there's a hands up for that, really? Oh, okay. And I was reminded of a poem that was scratched on the groundwood lunchroom wall, groundwood being where the pulp was made. And it went a bit like this. Some of you will know this ditty, others will go, well, here he goes again. What's he talking about? Is this about the duck again in Fort St. James? But it's not. No, Kelly's going, oh my dear, oh my dear. It goes like this. Dirty days have September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31 with little chance of any sun. If all the months had 2 and 30, they'd be twice as wet and twice as dirty. So that's Ocean Falls. But we are working with the Central Coast, with the Newhawk people and the Helswick people to find a way to get rid of the derelict buildings that are a real liability for people who make their way through the channel. It's a beautiful place on a sunny day, I'm told. I've not been there on those days. But so we're doing what we can to revitalize Ocean Falls. It's currently, there's a dam there, lots of energy is created, but no transmission in or out. So it's become a Bitcoin. I'm not promoting cryptocurrencies. I want the record to show that. I'm just making an observation that in Ocean Falls, they're mining Bitcoin. I didn't see any, I didn't touch any, I don't know anything about it, but that's what they're doing. And good luck to them. And so with that, I'm going to end my comments to you with one more word of thanks to all of you. I am inspired by the people of BC, and I'm inspired by all of you. It is not easy work, but it is honorable work, as I said earlier. I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for all the work that you have done, and give you my thoughts and prayers and best wishes for all the work that you have to do, because we are far from finished. But if we acknowledge together the challenges, and if we roll up our sleeves together, collectively, as collaborators in success, we'll succeed. Thank you so much. I'll see you around.